They told you your money was safe, that your savings were protected, that your bank, your government, your economy were too sophisticated to ever repeat the mistakes of the past. But what if I told you the trap has already been set? That right now in 2025, you were living inside the same financial illusion that destroyed millions of lives in 1929. Only this time, it's smarter, digital, invisible, and you won't see it coming until your money simply stops moving. This isn't about fear, it's about repetition, human repetition. Every collapse in history begins the same way, with people who think they're smarter than collapse itself. In 1929, they called it prosperity. In 2026, they're calling it resilience. Back then, people watched their wealth evaporate overnight. This time, your wealth might not vanish. It might just get frozen, locked behind systems that pretend to protect you while quietly controlling you. Let's go back to the first great illusion, the Roaring '20s. The world had just survived a war so big it was supposed to end all wars. Factories were booming, cities were electric, and people thought progress itself was unstoppable. The new symbol of wealth wasn't gold, it was credit, easy money, the idea that you could own the future today and pay for it tomorrow. But behind the glamour of jazz clubs and stock tickers, a quiet storm was forming. Banks were multiplying credit out of thin air, selling stocks with borrowed money, and promising everyone that prices would never fall. The Federal Reserve, barely a decade old, was supposed to prevent panic. But it did the opposite. It pumped the bubble until it became a monster. And when it tried to stop it, everything cracked. October 1929 wasn't just a crash. It was a mass awakening. People lined up outside banks, desperate to withdraw their life savings, only to find the doors locked. The money they thought they had didn't exist. It was numbers on paper. Sound familiar? Fast forward nearly a century. Different tools. Same story. In 2025, your money isn't paper, it's pixels. Lines of code. And that code lives on servers you don't control, under rules you didn't write. When your bank says you can't withdraw today, it won't look like a bank run. It'll look like system maintenance. When your funds are frozen, it won't be panic in the streets. It'll be a notification on your phone. Transaction failed. Here's the part nobody talks about. Every financial crisis has two sides, the visible panic and the invisible preparation. Before 1929, elites quietly moved gold offshore, converted assets, and lobbied for emergency powers. Before 2008, insiders shorted the housing market months before the crash. And right now, before 2026, the same pattern is emerging again. Central banks tightening liquidity while governments spend record amounts, banks raising rates while credit card debt hits all-time highs. You're watching a tightening noose disguised as economic management. Let's piece this together slowly. In the 1920s, the illusion of safety came from innovation, the new stock market, new cars, new credit. In the 2020s, the illusion comes from technology, apps, digital payments, instant transfers. But both systems rely on the same fragile belief, that there will always be someone on the other side of your transaction. What happens when there isn't? History doesn't repeat. It rhymes with cruel precision. Before the Great Depression, governments promised prosperity through intervention. In 1933, they literally confiscated gold from citizens for national security. They replaced tangible wealth with trust in government paper. And today, you're watching the same swap happen again, except this time, it's digital. They don't need to seize your gold. They can just flip a switch. Ask yourself, why are central banks around the world racing to create digital currencies right now? Why are savings accounts offering interest rates that can't keep up with inflation? Why are major economies suddenly warning about liquidity traps? Because they know what's coming. They've seen this movie before. In 1929, the average person had their money in stocks. In 2026, the average person has their money in savings. But the danger isn't what you invested in, it's what you believed about it. People in 1929 believed markets always go up. People in 2026 believe banks always stay open. Both are wrong. When a financial system matures too far, it begins to consume itself. In the late 20s, speculation on margin, the act of borrowing to invest, became the fuel of collapse. Today, the same thing is happening through debt leverage. Governments, corporations, households, all borrowing against future productivity that might never arrive. It's a ticking clock hidden under headlines of record growth. Let's look at one terrifying similarity. In 1928, the US had a 16% stock market rise right before the crash. In 2025, global markets hit record highs, while household debt hit record lows in savings to debt ratio. It's the same signal inverted. When people stop saving and start surviving on credit, the collapse is mathematically inevitable. The difference is, in 1929, the collapse was fast. In 2026, it might be slow and digital. The next crash won't look like people screaming on Wall Street. It'll look like silent screens, frozen transfers, restricted withdrawals. A temporary policy measure that never gets lifted. Your money won't disappear. It'll just stop obeying you. Now imagine this. The system blames you for trying to save. They'll say, we need to stabilize the economy, so we'll temporarily limit withdrawals, convert balances, or adjust digital currency values. It sounds technical, but in plain English, it means your savings are now a hostage. Look back at 1933 again. The US government revalued gold from $20 to $35 overnight. That wasn't a recovery, it was a reset. They robbed purchasing power from savers to pay off the system's debt. And now, in the 2020s, the same principle is returning. Except this time, they call it inflation targeting or monetary recalibration. It's the same heist with better branding. Here's the eerie part. In 1929, people trusted newspapers, or in 2026, people trust dashboards. Both tell the same lie, everything's stable. But real stability isn't what they print, it's what they hide. Beneath every promise of safety lies a quiet clause. Until further notice. The warning signs are everywhere. Banks holding emergency liquidity buffers. Governments quietly testing bank holiday protocols. Financial apps updating terms that allow them to delay transactions under extraordinary circumstances. These aren't random policy moves, they're preparation steps. Just like 1928 was filled with speeches about a permanently high plateau, 2025 is filled with soft landing talk. The plateau is always right before the fall. And here, that's the final twist for this part. The real reason your savings are trapped isn't inflation. It isn't bad banks. It's belief. Belief that the system exists to protect you, when in reality, it exists to protect itself. When a system starts preserving itself at your expense, your money stops being a tool and becomes a cage. Where are you watching from? Because history doesn't care. Whether you're in America, Europe, or Asia, the pattern is global. Money, once free, always finds its way into chains. The 1929 collapse taught the world what happens when wealth is concentrated. The 2026 collapse will teach us what happens when control is concentrated. If you're still watching, it means you already sense it. The quiet shift, the tightening circle. Maybe you've noticed the delays when transferring funds. Maybe your bank has changed withdrawal rules. Maybe you just felt that uneasy truth that something about security feels more like surveillance. You're not paranoid, you're early. Like this video if you can feel how close the pattern has become. Comment where you're watching from. I want to see how far this illusion stretches. And keep watching. Because the next part of this story explains exactly how the trap was built, who profits from it, and why 2026 might not be a crash, but a controlled collapse. It begins quietly, always quietly. In 1929, it started with margin calls, brokers asking for cash to cover leveraged bets. When the cash didn't come, they sold the assets, prices dropped, panic followed. In 2026, it begins with rate hikes and liquidity drains. But the story isn't in the news, it's in your inbox. Your credit card limit lowers. Your bank raises minimum deposit fees. Your employer delays payroll by a day. Small things, each one explainable, until they're not. When a system runs on promises, trust is the fuel. And trust dies slowly, then all at once. In 1930, after the crash, banks still promised solvency. They hung signs, "Don't worry, your money is safe," until they weren't. Customers walked up to doors that would never open again. In 2026, those doors are digital. There's no line outside the bank. Just a silent app screen. You tap to transfer and nothing happens. You try to call support and wait hours. You read headlines that say temporary disruption, but there's no timeline, no clarity, no escape. This is the breaking point. Not the crash itself, but the realization that you are no longer in control of your money. That savings, once a symbol of safety, has become a hostage to economic policy. Let's follow the timeline. As liquidity tightens, smaller banks begin to fail. Not explode, but quietly consolidate. Merged. Absorbed. The FDIC steps in with emergency backstops. But the narrative shifts. We need stronger oversight, a more centralized solution. Enter the digital dollar, framed as progress, safety, convenience, no more physical bills. Just an app tied to your biometric ID, instant transfers, no fees, government-backed. It's sold as the future, but it's really the cage. In 1933, they confiscated your gold. In 2026, they convert your currency, not forcibly, silently. One morning you wake up and your dollars have become Fed credits, usable only in approved merchant networks, programmed for expiration, taxation, and traceability. You try to pull out cash, ATM limits reduced. You try to wire funds abroad, pending verification. You try to pay for gold, crypto, or hard assets. Transaction denied, non-compliant merchant. And just like that, your savings are no longer yours. You can't hold them. You can't hide them. You can only spend them where they say, when they say, and how they say. This is the final stage, the fallout disguised as rescue. In 1929, they blamed speculators. In 2026, they'll blame hoarders, people who withdrew too much, bought gold, moved money offshore. The narrative becomes moral. If everyone just followed the rules, we wouldn't be here. But the rules were never for protection. They were for control. And when systems start blaming citizens for systemic failure, history repeats. What happens next is darker. With programmable money, the government doesn't just control your funds, they control your behavior. Carbon taxes linked to purchases, travel restrictions for non-essential spending, incentives for approved consumption. The illusion is complete. You're still working, still earning, but you're not saving. You're participating, spending, obeying. The economy continues, but freedom ends. Let's pull back. Who profits from this? The same types who profited in 1929, institutions. Families and firms with access to real assets, land, gold, equity and essential services. Those who cashed out before the trap closed. In 1930, JP Morgan and the elite banking families walked away richer than ever, not because they avoided the crash, but because they engineered the exit. In 2026, it'll be hedge funds with sovereign ties, digital asset monopolies, and central planners with pre-approved backdoors. But here's what you need to know. The trap isn't designed to kill everyone. It's designed to convert, to turn savers into dependents, independent wealth into conditional allowance, to make you believe that freedom is a threat to order. The warning signs are already blinking red. In 2023-2025, over 50 countries began piloting CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. China, Nigeria, Brazil, and yes, the United States. They called it research. They said it was optional. But every test was successful. Every step leads one direction. Meanwhile, household savings in America dropped to pre-2008 levels. Credit card debt surpassed $1.1 trillion. Real wages stagnated while asset prices soared. And now, the middle class is told to prepare for a soft landing, a phrase Wall Street invented to sell turbulence as a pillow. But history knows better. In 1929, the phrase was a temporary correction. In 2008, it was contained to subprime. In 2026, it will be a digital transition. 3 things you must understand before it's too late. First, your savings are only as safe as your access to them. Digital access can be denied, modified, programmed. If you can't touch it, you don't own it. Second, collapse isn't chaos, it's control. The louder the media says, we're in this together, the more divided the outcome will be. Elites consolidate, the public complies. Third, history doesn't warn twice. 1929 was a shock. 2008 was a warning. 2026 is a decision. The systems are in place, the tools are ready. The language has softened you. So what can you do? Real protection starts with knowledge. Get your assets out of vulnerable hands. Diversify into physical value. Land, tools, tangible stores of wealth. Build redundancy in your life, skills, communities, independence from centralized systems. Talk to your family, not about fear, but about sovereignty, about what money means when it stops flowing, about what safety looks like without trust in apps, dashboards, or digits. This isn't about running away, it's about seeing the structure clearly, knowing how it was built, how it broke before, and how it's being rebuilt right under your feet. So I'll ask you again, where are you watching from? Because no matter the country, the illusion is the same. The savings you thought were growing, they're trapped. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you followed the rules in a game that was designed to change. And if this video made you feel something, anger, awareness, curiosity, don't let it fade. Comment below with the country or city you're in. I want to see how far this message travels. And share this with someone who still believes their bank exists to protect them. Because the truth is, it never did. Subscribe if you want to understand what happens next. And remember, when the trap closes, it's already too late to run.